Hello and welcome back, everyone. My name is Desi, and today I'm back with a different style of video. This is a topic I've been thinking about for, I guess, years now, and this pertains to alcoholism. And this doesn't really fit the normal genre of what I talk about, but the whole point of this channel is just for me to go off on whatever tangents are in my head. I live out on a farm. I don't have a great deal of a huge social network because I live like 20 miles from the nearest town. So sometimes when I get things in my noggin and my therapist is unavailable, like I pay her to listen to me, y'all get to be my audience for some of the crazy things that go on in my noggin, or basically me trying to scratch that itch in whatever way I can. And this is the best way that I could think. So any feedback on this I would love. But I came across this channel, and this is the gentleman who runs the channel. It's called Backcountry Alcoholism and Sobriety. He is an amazing storyteller. He is an amazing producer. And he had his own struggles with alcoholism. And he has a very black and white, a little bit of gray view on alcoholism. I kind of wanted to just touch on some of the thoughts I had, not only on him, but just in alcoholism in general. Full disclosure, I am a recovering alcoholic, and I will go into that later of how deep I really got down. I'm going to actually do a tier list, which I haven't seen a lot of people do, so maybe it's an original thing. And I also have a lot of experience in my family. I have several family members, past and present, who are and were heavy drinkers and problematic drinkers. And I'll get into that. Anyways, without further ado, ladies, gentlemen, comrades, comrades, binary, non binary, ace and aloe, welcome to Ace Country. That's me trying to steal his intro and doing a very poor job. And this is the Ace mascot, who I always portrayed as a unicorn because nobody believes that aces exist. So that is our mascot. And unfortunately, there is a subgenre, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, where everybody's polyam, where basically an ace is like, or a unicorn is a man's fairy tale fantasy of a bi woman who comes in and fixes a dead bedroom. There's lots of interpretations, but I want to take the ace mascot back for aces. I want to take the unicorn. That's my attempt at stealing his thunder for his intro. I'm just a small indie company over here, like Blizzard, except for rather than pay my employees horrible wages and have horrible working conditions, I pay my employees nothing because I have none. Anyways, on with the show. First of all, I wanted to talk about how I came across Backcountry and just kind of my story with drinking. I basically started in my early 20s, and I started because I was bored. This was right after the recession, which is a tell of how old I am. I don't want to talk about it. Um, and the job market was crap. I was in business administration, which is, in hindsight, a pretty useless degree, but it did help me get to my current profession. So I'm grateful for that. But I was 24 years old, kind of fresh out of college, and I remember the first time that I started. I never was a drinker up until about 24 because I had school. I didn't, when I first tried alcohol, I never really liked the taste. I thought, like, why do people drink this? It tastes like crap. And then when I was 14, my cousins were all drinkers by that time. My family, what they would do, like I said, my family, I have a fair amount of drinkers in my family. What they would do on holidays is everybody would bring a bottle of something. This was Thanksgiving. And in the back room, there'd be like 4 or 5 bottles of wine. There'd be Jack Daniels, all that sort of thing. And when I was 14, I was like, you know what? F it. I'm going to try drinking. And so I went in, and there was a big thing of vodka. It was probably Smirnoff or some other crap that one of my uncles bought or something. And I drank a shot of it. And I was like, I didn't feel anything. I was like, what's the point of this? This is lame and it tastes like crap. So I was like, well, maybe if I drink more. So I filled a whole glass full of it, basically plugged my nose and drank it down. Still didn't feel anything except for the just the horrible burn in my nostrils and down my trachea. Or I guess it's esophagus. Hello. And I was like, all right, well, apparently adults drink this to torture themselves. But about a half an hour later, I started feeling really good. I think it might have been No, it was Jack Daniels, and also this was just after Thanksgiving dinner. And I used to eat it. I've always loved cranberries, so I ate a ton of cranberries. So those of you who know probably know where this is going. And so I drank all that, and my cousin, who at that time I think was in his young 20s, was just like, "Oh, Desi, you're goofed up. Like, what are you doing drinking that much? You should have asked me, and I would have paced you. I would have chaperoned you or whatever through your first drinking experience." And yeah, about 1 o'clock in the morning, after I was loud and obnoxious, my uncle at that time, my uncle's an alcoholic. He's a beer drinker though, so he's never really gone off. He has and he hasn't. He's always struggled with it, but he was drunk too, so I was just laughing with him. My cousin, who's always been pretty decent at pacing himself, was like, "You guys are idiots." And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I threw up all over the floor. I think there's, and my grandma has, this was upstairs. I think she still has the same floor, and the stain is still there because she has white carpet up there. And I woke up the next morning feeling like ass. And I was like, my mom just, I got grilled. And my mom was just like, "You're never going to do that again." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm never going to do it again," because I felt like crap. And to be fair, I was pretty decent about not drinking for, you know, I had occasion when I was 19. I got blackout. That was the first time I ever got blackout drunk. I was with my cousins, and I was staying with my cousin, the same cousin, incidentally, who I mentioned earlier. And I was drinking 151 rum and like peach schnapps, and I got close to going to the hospital. I think that's the drunkest I've ever been. But as crazy as I woke up the next day, I had a headache. If I would have done that now, I don't think I probably would have felt it for 2 days afterwards, and the entire next day I wouldn't have been able to get out of bed. Yeah, it was bad. So that's a little bit of my story. Like I said, when I got into my 20s, I started drinking out of boredom. Um, it was in the evening, or it was like 3:30 in the afternoon. I was bored, and this is where I think the origination of problematic drinking starts. Is you're trying to fill a void. So rather than like go out and like socialize, or go out and find a hobby, I'm like, well, this is an easy fix. My parents have this box wine around all the time, and I should give it a try. And I went in and got some box wine. And I got, I had a glass of it and I felt real good. I went in, I made some snacks, and I was like, this is the way. Like, I'm enjoying pulling these weeds or whatever. I'm no longer bored. And this is where it started, and it was a slippery slope because all of a sudden, that one occasion where I decided to drink turned into a nightly thing. And thus started my journey with alcoholism. And okay, the next slide. At my worst, I was, especially after COVID, I was drinking roughly 8 to 10 glasses of wine a night. And I was journaling at this time too, because this is about when I started therapy, is when I was 32, 33. I was journaling, and 2 or 3 days a week I'd wake up with headaches. So it was getting to the point where it was starting to impact my life in a negative way. And when I was 34, around 2022, I'm not sure if I'm quite getting the ages right. I called my best friend, who I remember asking her, "Do you think I have a drinking problem?" My therapist was like, "You drink a concerning amount every day." And my therapist is like, "I don't treat couples who have drinking problems, because that is, you get rid of the drinking first and then we'll talk, because that is, you can't have any productive, and at least some therapists are different, but my therapist is just like, no, you can't have any productive, meaningful progress if you have alcohol involved, because it's just so harmful." So I want to get, now that that's out of the way and a little bit of my story, actually, let me finish. So when I was 20, so in 2022, beginning of the year, I called my friend and said, and this is a big step for a lot of people who go into sobriety. I said, "I'm going to quit drinking for 6 weeks." I said, "I'm going to quit drinking for a month." This was like January 2022. And she's like, "Well, that's great." I told my mom, I told my grandma, like my three closest people to me in my life right now. Actually, it's changed a little bit. Are my friend E, who I've mentioned before in many other videos, who's in Germany, my mom, and my grandma. And so those are the three that I told to hold myself accountable. And I stuck with it. Not only did I make it a month, I made it 6 weeks. And I remember when I drank after 6 weeks, I slowly brought it back in. I don't even want to, I wouldn't even call it a relapse. And this is where Bat Country, if you, I don't think Bat Country's ever going to watch this, but if he does, what's up, homie? I love your videos. Um, he's going to be like, "Well, you never had the intention of going sober." I, and that's true. I realized that alcohol was a problem. My therapist mentioned that it was a problem, noted that it was a problem. I recognized it. I'm like, something needs to change. I can't have this relationship with alcohol anymore. So I quit for 6 weeks. And 6 weeks later, I drank some white wine. I don't know, I had 4 or 5 glasses that night. I got a nice little buzz and I went to bed. And ever since then, ever since that point, that I drank a problematic amount. And this is where I'm gonna cut to the chase a little bit. Any amount of alcohol is bad for you. And I'm going to talk about that at the end a little bit. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, alcohol's good for you. It can be good in certain situations." No, it's just it's poison. All right? I'm not going to preach about the benefits of alcohol, because there are none. It is a bad substance. It is bad for you. There it is. But anyways, ever since 2022, I have been consistently drinking 1 to 2 times a month. Certain months like May, where there's like my mom's birthday, Mother's Day, or I go down to my birthdays in May and Memorial Day. There's like 4 times I drink in May. So May is one of my bad months, right? But other than that, I've consistently stuck with drinking 1 to 2 times a month on average. Is it problematic? Probably. Like, and when I do drink, I'll just give a context. When I do drink, I wait till about 4 o'clock in the evening. I usually drink beer, crack open the first beer, and from 4 to midnight, I drink about one an hour. So there's your number right there. And by the time I go to sleep, I'm feeling no pain. I don't get blackout anymore. Last time I got blackout drunk was, I don't know, 3 years ago. I lost my phone. So I have had, and those kind of days where I black out, those are kind of like relapses. Well, every time I drink is a relapse. If you want to, I don't even like. There's so much terminology that I could use, but every time I drink is sort of like a relapse. But I'm sure there's going to be people who have so many different opinions on this. Anyways, this video is Jim Leahy from Trailer Park Boys. Jim Leahy, I believe, is sober, but he plays the most convincing drunk person I've ever seen. But anyways, this is my creation. This is what I call the alcohol tier list. And initially I had 5 tiers, but 5 just wasn't enough. And Tier 0 is what I call the Mormon tier and the ex-alcoholic tier. I always say that people that say they don't drink are either Mormons or they're alcoholics. Because in general, most people, especially in this country or in a country where it's not illegal, consume marginally, depending on the group. I'd say the average consumption is probably it's like tier 2, tier 3, between those two. And I color coded these based on the impact and problematic amounts. But yeah, tier 0 is the teetotalers. I guess I'll get into this at the end. I'll just bring it up now. I find, and I had a friend who was like this, that the ex-alcoholics are frankly insufferable. I had a friend who became insufferable for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to call him G-Bag. And G-Bag, yeah. He was my best friend for, I don't know, probably 7, 8 years. He drank away most of his 20. He had an unplanned pregnancy. He's always been a patronizing fellow too. A lot of fun, but very patronizing. And when he quit drinking, he became insufferable. And when he was drinking during his heyday, he was like tier 8, I would say, on this list. He was a day drinker on the weekends, tier 7, maybe tier 7.5. I could have 20 tiers if I wanted to on this. And he got to the point of what I call no return, which is that black box. I'll get into that a little bit later. And he quit. And he became the most insufferable ass about drinking. Because I was still drinking because I never reached tier 7. I never reached the point of no return. He did. He quit, and he's just like, you should. He's one of those you should sort of persons. I freaking hate those type of people. Like, mind your own affairs. And not only that, but he's one of those types who was telling me what to do with my money when he didn't have any money because he pissed it away on alcohol in his 20s, and he figured out, oh, I should save money. And then he's preaching to everybody else about saving money, even though he was financially irresponsible and a freaking drunken idiot. I need to stop being salty. This is one thing I need to ask my therapist, is stop being such a salty bastard about stuff that friends like that aggrieved me in the past. He was a good friend for these many years, and yeah, he drank too much, and yeah, he became insufferable, but he's no longer a part of my life, so why am I still salty at him? Questions for the philosophers, I guess. But anyways, I will say that, and I've seen a lot of these channels, like there'll be one of my favorite channels of this like Welsh guy drinking is all just like these ex-alcoholics being like, oh gosh, how can you waste such a great day drinking? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know what? Let people do their thing. We don't need you coming in here with your preachy douchebaggery. Like, I'm glad you quit. I mean, it's like, I don't want to get into that. I was going to go start talking about vegetarians and vegans. Most vegetarians and vegans are fine. And there's a lot of them that quit eating meat that are heavy meat eaters. I feel like it's the same thing, that can't shut up about telling everybody how bad eating meat is. And I get it, it's different than alcoholism. Don't get me wrong. But the point stands of insufferability of somebody who quits something and can't, like the ex-smoker who tells everybody who smokes, like, oh, you're killing yourself. Oh my gosh, I'm probably going to get throttled by putting that in there. Well, I guess I could cut it out in editing. So, yeah, I will say that in tier 0, you have the insufferable ex-alcoholics. And tier 1, I always like to say that my friend G-Bag's parents were like this, is they would keep a bottle of bourbon and a bottle of Jack Daniels in the upper shelves where the kids couldn't get to it. And they would bring it out like every New Year's at 11 o'clock, and they would sit and have a couple glasses of it. You know, they get a little tipsy, have a little fun, and then go to bed at midnight or whatever. And those bottles would last them 5 years. And that's tier 1. And that sort of drinker is never going to really, they don't have an addiction. They don't really slip into it. It's not a part of their life. It's just something they do once in a blue moon. Maybe if they have company over, Or if it's an extremely special occasion, they'll drink some other time of year. But anyways, that's tier one. Tier two is what I call the holiday beer drinker. That's you know, the dad that goes with his kids, is barbecuing on 4th of July, and he'll have a couple of beers. I would say this is the more common form of drinker, at least here in the States. Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, the summer holidays, to have a couple of beers, all these barbecuing, and that it is what it is. Tier three, and this is where the color coding starts to change. Tier 0 through 1, I just call the non-problematic drinking, because any amount of alcohol is bad, but these people are not going to cause themselves health problems. And it's even Huberman, and Huberman Lab even says it. This is one of the podcasts that made me really start thinking about alcohol consumption too. He even says, like, if you have a beer like once a week, one beer a week, it's not going to cause anything. Have fun, go at it. But if you have any more than that, that's when it starts causing problems. So that's empirically proven right there. And tier 1 through 2, tier 0 through tier 2, tier 1, tier 2, I put in that non-problematic stage. You're not really having any health effects or anything else like that. Tier 3 is what I call like the gray area, and the special occasion drinker. I would say myself right now, I am between tier 3 and tier 4. I am at 3.5. I drink 1 to 3 times a month, average 2. I always say I have 2 slots available. I went completely dry this January. I usually go dry for January because there's nothing to do in January. There's no special occasions. I don't drink unless I have a reason to drink. I don't drink unless I have people to drink with. I very rarely, when I was in Taiwan, I did this once. It's because I was on vacation. I was planning to drink, but no one really drinks in Taiwan, which is crazy because I know tons of people drink in China, but Taiwan just doesn't really have a drinking culture, at least the place where I was in. So I did drink once by myself, but yeah, I consider myself tier 3.5. Special occasion drinker, I would say this is the most common type of drinker. Tier 2 and tier 3 are the most common types of drinker, at least here in the States. Now, a tier 3 person, on average, will drink once a month. And when they do drink, occasionally, let's say on New Year's, they will drink in excess. And when I mean drink, I mean 1 to 3 drinks. A tier 3 will occasionally drink upwards of 3, past 3, where you start to really get in the harmful stage. When you drink more than 3 drinks in a night, it's going to cause problems. You know, if you can't operate a motor vehicle, then you're causing yourself harm. Like, your brain is, the brain chemistry and the body and everything else, there's something fundamentally wrong if you're not sober enough to operate a motor vehicle. And so I think 0.08, 0.05 to 0.08 is that phase where you're starting to do harm to yourself. You're starting to kill brain cells or whatever. So that's why I color coded tier 3 yellow. Tier 4, I would say I was tier 4 December of last year, December 2025, because I drink 5 times that month. I haven't done that in a long time. I wasn't planning on it, but a special occasion popped up between Christmas and New Year's, and I went over my quota. But like I said, January, I went completely dry, and I drank on Super Bowl because the Seahawks were playing, and that's my home team, being here in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, tier 4 is where it starts to get problematic. You're drinking multiple times a month. Sometimes you overdo it. Those multiple times a month, you wake up with a headache. And tier 5 is really where I would say a person becomes a proper alcoholic. And why do I say that? Because it's a ritual for them. Special occasion drinker, it's based on certain times and certain events. You're not planning. Well, you kind of are. That's why I kind of say that tier 3 is in that gray area. Tier 4 is basically where you're drinking ritualistically once a week. And tier 4 is where you start regularly. I would say tier 4 is where you start to be known as a drinker by friends and family. oh, such and such likes to drink, such and such likes to have a good time, such and such occasionally drinks too much, but it's not really a problem. They just kind of laugh about it. Tier 5 is, yeah, I think that's what I just said. Yeah, I'm reiterating. Tier 6 is basically where a lot of people in my family are, or was, or were, people that are very close to me. I don't want to name specific names. My cousins, some of my cousins. I have a family on both sides of alcoholics. And tier 6, I would say, is generally where most of them are at. This is where I was at. I would say I was between 6 and 7. And when I say drink every night, I mean like 1 to, or maybe even more. If you have a beer, yeah, basically it's a ritual. I think a lot of alcoholism is the ritual of drinking. If you drink every night, even if it's one drink and you drink one drink a day, you're a proper alcoholic because it is a part of your lifestyle, is a part of who you are. And I would say tier 6 is really where alcoholic decay, and this is a term that I've kind of coined myself, starts to take into place. Alcoholic decay is where you start letting things go because alcohol is consumed a part of your life. This is where I was too. My room started getting messy because this is where alcohol starts stealing and the rest of your life starts decaying. Your hygiene occasionally, tier 6 where you start experimenting with binge drinking, where you'll drink multiple drinks an hour. Oh yeah, let's have a good time. Basically, your good time, everything starts to revolve around drinking. For you to have a good time, you have to start drinking. If you're not drinking, everything's boring. You start having withdrawal symptoms. This is where that's why I highlighted it in that red hue. This is problematic drinking. Tier 5, I'd say, is where problematic drinking starts. Tier 6, you're sunk into it. This is where I was before I quit. Tier 6, you wake up with hangovers a couple times a month, maybe even once a week. For me, it was a couple of times a week on occasion. That's why I say it's between tier 6 and 7. Now, tier 7 and 8, I highlighted these black because this is where I believe is the point of no return. And I'm going to give a couple of examples here about my cousins. My cousin, what should I call my cousin? B. My cousin B. There we go. I like that. My cousin B, her mother was fundamentally religious. She had trauma in her early life. She didn't really drink much up until her 20s, but then she started experimenting with other things, but alcohol just became like her go-to, and especially like the last couple of years, and she had to quit. She's sober now. She quit about, I think, 6 months, 4 or 5 months ago. And in those last few years, like on her birthday, she invited all the family over her for her birthday. We've been trying to get closer to her because my cousin B is a wonderful person, one of the nicest, most genuine, kind-hearted people you've ever met. Very sweet. But when she drinks, she is a binge drinker. Like on her birthday, she invites everybody over, and she has kids too, mind you. And her kids even is just like, oh yeah, mom's drunk again, haha. It's a regular thing. It was shameful. But she would oblivion drink is what I call it. I would say she was like between 8 and 9, where she would get blackout drunk by 6 in the afternoon on a summer day. We'd show up and she'd just reek of alcohol. On New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, they would have parties. She'd already be starting by the time everybody showed up. My grandma, who's 94, she like I said, she's the matriarch of the family. She's like, her and I are very close. She's one of the 3 closest people in my life. She can pick up on that. She's just like, oh, B's been drinking. She's just like, I bet she was in the back taking little nips. She says, by the time you get there, my grandma called it. She's just like, this isn't going to go well. This dinner isn't going to go well. This party isn't going to go well because B's going to get drunk. And sure enough, by the time dinner rolls around, B's slurring her words. And also, B gets very, like, nasty and defensive. She gets in your face. Like, her and my dad had a huge argument. B just called him up with my uncle, who's an alcoholic. and she just started just absolutely just grilling him, just going off on my dad. And of course, she gets sober and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That was horrible of me to say." But this is where 7 and 8 is our point of no return. Alcohol has become a part of your personality. Alcoholic decay is completely taken over. You're neglecting work. You're neglecting family. You're all around you. Things are starting to go into disrepair. Clothes are getting thrown on the floor because you're too. In the evenings, you're too drunk. And you just throw off your clothes. You stink. You have hygiene problems. You're not showering regularly. It's just, yeah. I really do like that term of alcoholic decay, and I think it's an original term that I've used because everything is decaying around you, including yourself, mind you. This is where you start having health problems. My cousin got a yeast infection. I don't know if that was specifically related to alcohol, but it was definitely a hygiene issue. My cousin O, I would say, is a tier 9. He stayed at my family's house back, like, this was 15 years ago when he started drinking because of anxiety. He was trying to solve a problem with it. This is why a lot of people start. For me, it was boredom. For my cousin, it was anxiety. And just for context, we were gone 3 days. I was like 21 at the time. He went through two 24 packs of beer and a box of wine in 3 days. And the first night my mom was there, my mom and I were watching a video with him. He drank so much that he asked to do something inappropriate with my mom, her aunt, or his aunt. I don't want to get into it, but it was like almost sensual in nature. It's just like, and I don't think he meant for it to be like that, but yeah, it's still like flabbergasts me. And this is what happens. Tier 7 to tier 8 is where you start doing stupid things and having regrets the next day. This is where you can ruin family relationships, friendships end, unwise decisions, and regrets. And I really think it is a slippery slope. Once you get to tier 4, it is so easy to fall into tier 7. It can happen in a matter of months for some people. So, tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10. Tier 9 is where my friend, or he's not I don't know him personally, where Bat Country was. And he goes on about his binges, and he was just had these legendary binges, getting like in Kyrgyz, I think it was Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan or something, just cycling across the country and just getting. And when he drinks, he's one of the types too. And this is where I think the point of no return too is where an alcoholic cannot have one drink. This is what would happen with Bat Country. Is he would have relapses where he'd go to he was in Germany one time. He went to a Spati, which I'm going to talk about Germany here in a second. And he would, or this one time he went and he got 4 beers because he'd been sober for 6 months. He's like, I'm going to celebrate. I can do this. I'm not going to fall back into this. I'm going to overpower this or whatever. And as soon as he cracks that first beer and takes a sip, it's over. And he went from 6 months sober, and in 2 days, he was on the streets, covered in filth, unwashed, unshaven, and a complete wreck, basically having to go to rehab. And that's the point of no return for alcoholics. And it really is an extremely nuanced thing, the point of no return. I never got there. At least I don't believe I did, because I can go, and I do this quite often, and I don't count these as my special, and this is, I still am a problematic drinker. I'm not going to deny that, because when I do my special occasions, that's why I say I'm between 3 and 4. Like I said, sometimes 8 to 10 drinks when I have my special occasion days. That is too much. It is a stupid amount, and I question myself. But that is 1 to 2 times a month. Now, I can go to a bar with a friend and have one or two drinks and stop. Because I always say the best amount of alcohol, if you're trying to min max it, is two. And that's where you stop. You're never going to get the same, at least for me and a lot of other people I've talked to, you're never going to get all the positive benefits, or positive, I use it as a relative term. You're never going to get that after two. You have the first one, especially with me being a lightweight now. After I finish the first one, I'm feeling pretty good. I've got kind of the bubbly. I feel completely competent. I don't feel any of the sludge. It really does feel like brain sludge once you get drunk. It feels good, but once you've had three and you're over the legal limit or whatever, it's you're pretty much you either stop or I don't. It's so freaking nuanced, but I always say the best is this when you crack the second beer up until you finish that second beer. That is it. That is the slot. It's never going to get better than that. And I get for people who drink the first time they have one drink and they get a buzz for whatever. Just for me personally, and when I go out and meet a friend, I've done this quite often. We'll go to a bar and we'll have two drinks over 2.5 hours sometimes. And I find, and this is where I'm going to get into the final stage now that I've covered all the oblivion and no point of no returns. I think it's a good segue. I've been talking forever. I find that having a conversation with another, even with a sober person, if you have two drinks, you might get a little laughy and giggly, but you can still carry on a conversation. You can still be fully present. When you've exceeded two, you start getting brain fog and you start getting the sludge, as I call it, the brain sludge. For me, when I have more than two, and especially in a short period of time, on my third is when I start having issues with cognition. My mouth, I get stuck on some words, not quite slurring, but I get stuck. And I don't like that. Like, I'm still able to form cogent thoughts, but it's like my brain is working faster than my mouth. And that's the thing too. I think that's the problem. Is I think the brain is still able to function, but the body starts to experience, like the brain, yeah, when you're over the legal limit or whatever, you start slurring, your brain slows down, but I think your body gets hit worse. That's where you start having the issues with the tunnel vision, the eye test and everything else, and the stumbling and the kind of staggering loss of balance. I think that happens before the brain. Like, you could be having a conversation, having a great time. And I've had this many a times when I was drinking heavily. It's having this great conversation with somebody, even somebody who's sober, and it's fine, everything's fine, and I get up to take a pee or something, and whoa, I'm like, oh shoot, I'm proper drunk now. So there's a million layers of nuance in here, but for me, I really do cherish those occasions when I'm with family and friends and I have a couple of drinks and I stop, or if I'm, what happens on a special occasion on a lot of nights, if I'm especially with other people who drink, that's when I'll go on my 1 an hour thing, or semi binge, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, the most enjoyable time I have with alcohol is between the second the second drink. When I crack open that second beer and I drink that second beer, because I'm fully functional, I'm fully present, but also I have the warm and the fuzzies without any of the deleterious mental and slurring and everything else like that. And I want to talk about this occasion I had in Germany. A positive drinking story, if you will. I was with my best friend E, who I've mentioned before, the person I called when I was like, hey, I'm an alcoholic and I want to get control of this. Or get more control over it because I still don't have full control over it. If I had full control over it, I would, I'd be a tier 1 or tier 2 drinker and I wouldn't, drink 6 to 8 a night on special occasions. But we found this place in the Black Forest. It was by a castle. I'm going back to Germany again this May. And my best friend is an ex-Mormon. She's probably like a tier 2 drinker. She drinks every once in a blue moon. Sometimes she gets drunk, but very rarely. And it's never going to become a problem with her. But we were at this lodge, this hunting lodge in the Black Forest. I don't think this is the one. It looks very similar to this though. It's like a Hansel and Gretel thing. We're just wandering through the woods and we found this honey. That's what I love about Germany. It's unlike anything in the States. You'll just be walking through and there'll be a 400-year-old building and they'll be like serving, lunch or whatever. So we went in there, we had a great lunch. And it was like a 95-degree day. It was hot as heck. And we sat outside and we had like this mushrooms. It was one of the best meals I've ever had. We had these really good appetizers. And I said, you know what? We're going to splurge. I said, I'm going to get a bottle of rosé. And they had a really nice bottle of rosé. And E and I sat out there for probably 3 hours with this lunch. And we sipped on this rosé that was in ice. The waiter was this awesome guy. He brought it out in ice. And it was it was a special occasion sort of thing. I didn't drink that much when I was in Germany, if you can believe it. I got drunk maybe twice that entire 3-week trip. And this was a lunch thing too. And while we were walking, we didn't have to drive anywhere. We weren't that far from our hotel. We were near Heidelberg. And I got this bottle of rosé, and we just talked and reminisced on this beautiful summer day at the hunting lodge. And we had this bottle of rosé. And it was magical. Did I need the rosé for it to be magical? No. But this is where I'm going to make an analogy. Alcohol is bad for you. There is no doubt about it. It does brain damage, it's poison. But so is soda pop, so is ice cream, so is cake, so are energy drinks. The list goes on and on and on and on. Okay? Ice cream is nice. Some people eat ice cream as a comfort food. It is objectively bad for you, okay? And I get it's not the same, but it is a parallel. It's not the same parallel, but it is a parallel. And that bottle of rosé and that special occasion, I remember all of it because we drank it real slow and cherished and sipped it because it was delicious. And I'm sure if Backcountry is going to watch this, you'd be like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's problematic drinking. You don't need that alcohol to have a good time. You're right. I didn't. It still would have been a good time. But you know what? I was splurging. We paced it. It's not cope. It was enjoyable. It went well with the meal. Oh, well, you don't need alcohol. You're making excuses. No. That was a moment that I will cherish forever, and that bottle of rosé was delicious. Neither of us got drunk, and we went on a 5-mile hike up the mountains afterwards. Drank plenty of water, of course. And we had a good meal with it. And I know there's going to people, maybe sober people in the comments are going to say, you know what, that was a bad thing you did. Yeah, that bottle of rosé was bad for me, but it felt damn good, and I had a good time. And I have not become an alcoholic. I didn't go on a binge afterwards. I was able to stop. I was able to get my buzz, maximize, get to that, second drink phase and hold it. And that's the risk with alcohol. I'm gonna go off on another tangent here because you know what? Why not? This video is an hour long anyway. It is so easy to get, even for me as someone who can stop at 2, to have that third drink because I feel good. I want to keep feeling good. But in my mind, and then maybe this is just me and my gamer brain, min-maxing. You're never going to get past that good feeling of the second drink. That is it. You're never going to surpass it. And that's the problem with alcohol. You chase that buzz. And it's so easy. You have your third drink, you're feeling good, but it's diminishing returns. And by the time you're in your 4th or 5th drink, you're not even present anymore. You just feel good. All you know is that you feel good and you want more of feeling good. But there's no longer any presence of mind or anything else like that. But this occasion at the hunting lodge, I would say, is a positive drinking experience. Yeah, it was bad for me, but there's a million things that are bad for you. I mean, getting old is bad for you, for heaven's sakes. I know it's a terrible analogy and parallel. Eating ice cream, energy drinks, saturated fat, there's tons of crap that's bad for you. But in this situation, I would say that it was overall a positive. So, sue me, ex-alcoholics. Anyways, I'm going to reach my conclusion here. Can one have a positive relationship with alcohol? No, because it is not a positive substance. Can one have a positive relationship with ice cream? Can one have a positive relationship with Pepsi or Coke? No. And it's a slippery slope. I think it really depends on each person, and Backcountry has made a case that there are drinkers who can consume and not have it be problematic. And I think that is the distinction. Can one have a non-problematic relationship with alcohol? Yes, I believe you can. But the problem is, and I believe there's a genetic thing, I believe it's proven, and I'm one of those type too. This Huberman mentioned this. Is I'm one of those types who, when I drink, I don't have the negative effects that a lot of other people do. It is a genetic thing. It is in my genes on both sides of having alcoholics, where I feel good when I drink. And I can drink a lot and still feel good and not feel like going to sleep. I can be one of those types, my cousins are like this too, where we're the last ones at a party and we're all loud and having a good time where everyone else goes to sleep. Now, the difference is because I've had experiences and because I've had all these bad things happen when I've been drinking, that I can be in process of drinking but say, I need to slow down. I need to stop. I need to drink water. I need to do something else. I need to stop. Because it's so easy too. Once you get past that third drink and go down that slippery slope, and that's still the issue when I drink today, and it's something I need to. My grandma's even talked about. She says, Desi, when you drink, I'm very proud of you for getting better with your drinking, and that's so awesome. But you drink too much sometimes. And in the old days, I'm like, oh no, it's not that big of a deal. I've got it all. You're right, I do, and I get out of control, and I want to be better about that. I think if you drink more than 4 drinks in a night, it's a kind of a freaking waste. You pace it out, fine. But I do that regularly on my special occasion days. And the problem is too, and this is what worries me about myself, is I set these days to be my special occasion days, and I get hyped for it. Like on Super Bowl, I'm going to drink on Super Bowl. It's been 6 weeks since I drank. It's been since New Year's Eve. I'm getting all hyped. I get so excited. Because, yeah, I get to drink. I've been so good. I've been good. I get to drink. It's like a relapse. And it's a slippery slope. On Super Bowl, I think I drank like 9 beers or something like that. Like, yikes. And I remember, it was like, and the problem is too, is like, because it has that effect of making me awake and alert, or not alert, it's the opposite of being alert, but because it gives me this energy, whereas a lot of other people, I would say most of the people, it makes them tired. That's where the problems start. I have that bad gene. But yeah, I guess that's my conclusion. You can't have a positive relationship because it's poison, but you can have a non problematic relationship, just like you can with ice cream or sugar or saturated fat or pop. So, anyways, I was expecting this to be a half an hour, and here we are at 50 minutes. But I thank you all for watching. Please leave comments if YouTube doesn't throttle my video for saying something, for saying a bad word that's not even a bad word. I hope this gets lots of views. I hope to get some interaction with people who watch. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.